Have you ever noticed that whenever gold hits all-time highs, you never hear anybody talking about selling it? Silver, kind of the same thing. I feel like every time that there's a run-up, no one ever really catches the top. Now, that's not unique, obviously, to silver or gold. I mean, that happens a lot with stocks and other things. The thing with, I would say gold and silver is you don't see that type of run like you do in stocks. You don't see that consistent, strong upward trend over time. You see you see a quick run up and then it, tails back down, and it just kind of, porpoises up and down above the, the highs or whatever it is. But nobody ever seems to really get out at the top. And then, I've never seen a channel where someone's actively, buying and selling silver. Now, that being said, many stockers are thinking at this moment, well, but that's because you don't do that with silver. Well, why not? Well, you do that with everything else. Why wouldn't you do that with silver? I mean, anything beyond whatever your, SHTF type stack is, should be, something you want to get more of, right? You want to get more by selling some at the highs and buying in at the lows. The thing is, I think the hard part with gold and silver in particular versus something like even stocks or even crypto is, so I know there's a lot of people that do like technical trading, like looking at the numbers and what, is it, oversold or overbought, and, what does the technical analysis say? Now, to me, realistically, technical analysis, I feel like there's a lot of, it's kind of like voodoo in there. There's no real scientific thing behind technical analysis, in my opinion. Now, I'm not trying to get anybody mad, but I will say that what, the reality of technical analysis is, that's probably exactly how the computer algorithms operate, that do the trading for gold and, for stocks. So if that's the case, then yes, technical analysis can have, a bunch to it. That being said, you always got to think to yourself that there's always a smarter individual out there who programs these things, who thinks, of all these different things that are gonna, human nature and all those different things that go into the computer algorithms. So it's interesting to me, like, again, whenever you see that gold and silver have these large runs and, prices this and that, and, gold's had a pretty strong run. It's been sitting near the highs. It's been strong, but at some point, like everything else, it'll come fading back down. And the question is, why don't you sell, near the peak to accumulate more, whether it's through the gold silver ratio or, anything like that. But it just seems like the stocking community is not about that. Now, when it comes to things like stocks, the hard part with stocks, in my opinion, is that, back 20, 30 years ago, things really were, particularly stocks, really were based on, valuations that you could find through, looking at the fundamentals and things like that. But post 2008, all of that's gone. I mean, realistically, like when I hear people talking about, well, this company's got really good profits, and I kind of laugh to myself, because the reality is, you try to find any type of, stock that's really valued based on its fundamentals, its underlying Warren Buffett style of investing, and those days are gone. I mean, everything is just ridiculously inflated. Now, again, to that point, you hear a lot of people say, well, that's why I feel like everything's going to come crashing down. The same thing was said after 2008. If you remember 2008, well, the horror stories first. Everyone that has a horror story from 2008, I lost my retirement, I lost everything. Well, why? Either you were going big in real estate and you couldn't afford it, or if you're talking about your retirement assets, like in your 401k or whatever, well, just like every other person who makes big mistakes, reacting emotionally with investing, you sold out at the bottom, and then you stayed in cash because you didn't trust the system, and then it just ripped upward, and you became one of those people that hate the market because you're like, I don't trust it. I mean, I guess this is something that you see a lot with people who have a lot of money. They, just because you don't have money, or you have money, it's definitely not a reflection necessarily on your investment acumen or even your intelligence necessarily. People have money for different variety of different reasons. But that being said, 2008, after 2008, obviously when we were going through it, it seemed like, things are going to be very different and, blah, blah, blah. Nope. More of the same. The market went right back up. I think end of 2010 market was back where it was before the crash. And then it spent the next decade, going up basically with some little divots in between. That kind of thing. I mean, again, monetary policy has been the biggest driver of the markets since 2008. And that will continue to be the case in the future. But yet you hear all these people say, like, the debt is it's unsustainable and we can't just keep printing. Absolutely we can. Absolutely we can. Why? Because people don't understand that the sovereign finance that we experience here in the United States is not like your household finance. It's not like, the credit card companies are going to come for you. It's not how it works. It's not based in the same type of mechanisms as that type of thing. And I can understand how that can be confusing. But at the same time, like, you can't make your decisions as far as, growing your money based on those concepts that you don't understand. It just is what it is. Now, where that comes back to gold and silver is, okay, if that's the case, then, how do I treat gold and silver? Well, I mean, the reality with gold and silver is that, there really are no underlying fundamentals. What are you going to base your purchases on? Demand for silver, that kind of thing? It's clear if you look over time that, especially post 2008, that silver price isn't anything based on demand. I mean, there has to be something there, but realistically, like, spot doesn't reflect that kind of thing. So it's very interesting, like, if you're a stacker and I hear Veritas files, yes, I hear you. Silver is not an investment. I've heard that many times, but I would venture to say that the majority of people that buy silver bullion do treat it as an investment. I would bet money that that's the case. Now, there are plenty of SHTFers and preppers and that kind of people who it's not about the investment. I totally recognize that. John Bannon, yes, you are a prepper stacker. You're not about the investment portion. You stack for weight. You're not worried about all the different price movements and things like that. You want the physical silver. Totally get it. See plenty of those. But I would say that, again, most people that get into it, especially with all the hype, the last post-pandemic or during the pandemic, most people that are getting into it now are looking for the quick buck, or at least relatively quick buck. And with that kind of thing, gold and silver, there's just nothing to base. It's literally gambling if you're trying to do that. The silver raid didn't work. The silver squeeze did nothing for, stackers except raise premiums. It's just a pretty twisted environment, whereas you could be in stocks for way less cost, make way more money, and then turn around and turn your profits into gold and silver. Why waste your time by buying physical bullion as an investment? It's pointless. You pay too much on the front end. You lose on the back end when you go to sell it, unless you're way up. And yes, there are plenty of stackers out there who say, oh, I bought in 2019 or 2018 and I'm way up on my stack. So there's that, Chris. What are you going to say about that? Okay, so you took advantage of a fluke. If you're waiting for the next pandemic for it to go back up, I mean, I guess, what is going to be the next mechanism that drives price higher? Your guess is as good as mine, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Whereas things like stocks, I can pretty confidently say that as rates come down, stocks are going to go up. The mechanism is very clear. Cheap money drives the market. And as that money gets cheaper, stocks will go higher. It's not the same with gold and silver. That's why I say, every time you're trying to invest with gold and silver, you got to ask yourself, when's the time to pull the plug? When's the time to sell and maybe turn that into something else so that you can end up buying more gold and silver? Why wouldn't you want that?